Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining the Bold Life today.
Hi, Tess. I'm great. I'm very grateful to be here. It's great to speak with you. So thank you.
Yeah, you too. Well, I just want to dig right in, and I want to. We're going to talk about fear today, and I want to ask you, tell us a story about a time that you were afraid and how you worked your way through it.
I think the time that I was most, one of the times I was most afraid was when I was about to quit my job. I had officially committed to it in my head, and I was on day two of trying to get a meeting with both of my bosses to officially quit. The day before didn't really work out. We couldn't all sync on the same schedule. I had like two tiers of bosses, so I had to explain why I was not coming back tomorrow. And it was a terrifying feeling, but I was very set in my rationale, my values, my feeling of why the environment that I was in was not right for me, and especially why at the age of 23 at the time, I was determined to not feel as awful as I felt for no particular reason. Uh, so I waited basically an entire day until 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I would speak with both of my bosses. And there were quite a few things on the line in this regard. I wasn't just walking in with guns blazing and saying, "I'm out of here, suckers, goodbye." I was walking out on a campaigning politician who was at the time very likely to become the next governor of a state. I had, I have family members who are active in, they run their own businesses, they have their own businesses, and are very active in the state, which is a very small state, a very small business scene. So, screwing up or making someone dislike me or my family name or anything, there was a lot of pressure on me in that regard. So it wasn't just me quitting a job. It was, am I really going to screw up a lot of things by doing this and not sticking out the job? And that was a moment of sheer terror. But when I was in there, I basically explained to them what I'm explaining to you, and that was a really loud 18 wheeler. Uh, that where I was at in my life, it wasn't worth feeling depressed. Or, there was no reason for me to be in so deep with a situation that was so unhealthy for me. And in the end, that confidence in my decision and in articulating those reasons to them, and my bosses, made them understand. I think that uh, I was lucky or accidentally skilled at articulating these feelings in such a way that it kind of transcended the situation at hand and the circumstances at hand. And these couple of guys looked at me and they said, "This is just a 23-year-old kid who's not loving what he's doing and he's miserable doing it. We don't want to feel like he has to stick around." So it actually worked out really well. And I left on good terms from that job and was out the door with that fear gone for about a half hour. And then I got home and I said, "What did I just do? What am I doing with my life now?" And then a whole new element of fear came into play. So yeah, that was definitely one of the more terrifying moments when there's so many unknowns and uncertainties. And I was just explaining to someone earlier today that those fears, those uncertainties, that discomfort, they're so indicative of something important. We don't really get terrified of something that doesn't matter. We're all like afraid of dying because it's so unknown and uncertain, and because we really don't want to die. We want to live. We're afraid of public speaking because there's so many uncertainties of people listening to us and actually judging us and assessing what we're saying and who we are as a human being in this very short and condensed time period. We're scared of making big decisions because we understand the implications of those decisions that we're making. We have to assume responsibility for them. We have to deal with the fallout, all these different implications. So fears feel terrible, but they are very excellent and accurate measuring sticks of things that matter most to us. And that's, it's never. I don't think it really ever gets easier. I think might get more familiar with encountering fear, but you do become very skilled at recognizing this is something important and I should investigate it more fully. And I think in the last 3.5 years, I've gotten pretty good at that.
Well, I'm not going to let you quit with the story. Now you have to just say a little bit about how you got on to the next phase.
Uh,
If you
well,
don't mind, of course.
no, of course. The next phase of after I quit,
Uh-huh.
well, I was a very slow and methodical at figuring out where I was and who I was and what I was going to do next. At this point, after I had quit my job, I was outright depressed, and I made a series of commitments to myself to overcome that and to figure out really what I wanted to do. I had purchased the domain name daversolo.com, which would become my blog, and I knew I was a writer in my heart, and I wanted to write. I didn't know what. So I started actually exploring what was going on inside of me through writing. Uh, Writing has always been kind of a very therapeutic, explorative means for me. I'm not always excellent at understanding what's going on in my own head, or even articulating it verbally. I tend to be like the quiet one in the room. I like to kind of observe other people and listen to other people rather than just, take over and expound upon philosophies. But writing is really powerful because through writing, I feel like I can sort my thoughts and organize my feelings and understand what I'm thinking and feeling in my head, which was excellent because I basically began a process over a few months of kind of rebuilding myself from the inside out through writing. I wrote, little manifestos to me, and I examined the implications of Generation Y culture and the socio-political backdrop of the world that we're in, and how that impacts a young person like me, and why I have these high ideals and am such a big dreamer and can't be content with just having a good enough job that gave me a steady paycheck. I really began this deep philosophical kind of exploration of myself, and in doing so, that kind of I built sort of a foundation there, and I felt very grounded and confident in that understanding of me. It kind of dissipated the fears of others judging me because I said I know myself better than anyone who's going to be, unfairly criticizing me or what I'm doing, and their criticisms don't really matter because I'm confident with where I am. So for me, writing and exploring myself and being introspective and also beginning to share that writing with others and understanding that they, readers from across the world through my blog begin to connect with that on a fundamentally human level was also a great sense of reassurance that I wasn't crazy, but I was tapping into something here. I wasn't sure what, but beginning to understand and explore myself and the human core was very therapeutic for me, I think.
Wow. So you started sharing those thoughts right away on your blog. You worked it out. Those were personal writings in a journal or on your blog?
Both.
Oh.
Both. Yeah, I didn't really with when I started with the blog, I wasn't really sure what I was doing and where I was going with it. So I have very disjointed thoughts in the early archives of my blog. But I basically began to share whatever I felt was important and emotionally evocative, or worthy of consideration. And it basically started kind of as a self-help theme because I was literally trying to help myself out of a place of depression and confusion and quarter-life crisis, this and that. Then it evolved into personal development. Okay, now that we're out of the hole, how can you, at Reading at Home, actually begin to develop yourself in an intelligent way that makes you, stronger and able to deal with fear and uncertainty and understand yourself. So I went through all these evolutions through the blog, which is kind of cool to see, of going from, self-help and dealing with a bunch of shit that sucks to being in control of that and asserting yourself over that and kind of building yourself up and then reaching a stage where it's not effortless, but it almost feels like it's more effortless. And you hit a stride, a circle of being able to understand yourself and analyzing your emotional response to different situations and so on. So the blog was very helpful in that regard for me, and it really boiled down to writing. I was able to understand so much more about myself through writing and just as well as it would have been journaling, to to get it all out on paper and be able to see it and say, this is what I understand more about who I am.
Wow, that's pretty amazing what you did. You know, to go in and quit like that, and then I'm sure it was a little more difficult than your story, but it's just amazing that you flowed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was difficult. It was. I mean, can't say I would want to like live through it again, but because it's all I know, it was a great experience for me, and um, kind of facing up to myself at a young age. I'm very proud of that fact that I did that. I'm really glad that I didn't
Waste
concede.
time, waste your
Yeah,
life.
yeah. I'm glad I didn't concede and say that there was plenty of time for me to deal with that when I was later along in life, and it's something that I really like to encourage in other people as well, because why not? Why not now?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Why not face the fear now? Because, as we said, that fear is indicative of something that lies beyond. The fear is a threshold. It's there, but what is it keeping you back from? What is it? What are you hiding from, or what are you afraid to actually admit to yourself? And once you break through that threshold, then you start following these breadcrumbs and figuring out your way. And there's, I think that on a spiritual level, I think that those are all indicative of what we're meant to do in this life. I think we look beyond the fears to find the purpose that we're meant to serve for ourselves, for family and friends, and for the world around us. So, I mean, you have the fears, they're showing you something.
Those were all really good questions that you just stated out loud.
Were they?
Yeah, yeah, our listeners can get a lot out of those,
Good. Well,
especially if they actually answer them.
right. Well, now I'm putting the pressure back on them that are watching. So the pressure was on me to come up with something good, and now the pressure's on you to answer them for yourself.
So, talk to us about unleadership.
On leadership, absolutely. On leadership, or what I call leading without followers, is a lens. It's a matter of psychological reframing. It's kind of like mindset training through which you view yourself as a leader, even if you don't have job title, status, fame, exorbitant wealth, really nice salary, or any followers. And when you put on this lens and you begin to look at yourself as a leader in your life, just through your actions, your words, your deeds, your goals, your dreams, overcoming your fears, developing oneself, giving to others as liberally and widely as one can, whether it's in smiles on the street to strangers. I keep poking out my window because here I am in New York and I just always see life moving about me. Or what you're giving, to charity, whatever it may be, whatever your form of giving is. For me, I consider writing a form of giving. For you, it might be music, it might be art, it might be practicing law, you might be an accountant. You're always giving and contributing to the world, to society, to others. When you look at yourself as a leader or an unleader, you begin to get a very helpful process for understanding what your true values are, which are reflected in how you want to give to other people. You get to get a very strong sense about your gratitude in life, what you're truly grateful for, and what you really aspire to that other people would experience themselves.
Uh-huh.
When you're grateful for having great family and friends, that amount of gratitude, you look around you and you say, I really wish that this stranger would experience that same level of comfort and groundedness and support with family and friends too. And these are all really revealing of your talents, your strengths, your passions. And so through this lens on leadership, you gain a lot of clarity, I think, in this method of kind of reframing who you are and your interaction in the world, without dealing with the material, the social metrics of success that I like to call them.
That just messes up leadership.
Right, and
so the leadership that you're talking about, unleadership, is really the true leadership.
Yeah, it's the
leadership in the right place.
Yes, it's the leadership that comes from within. Here's the thing: all leadership always comes from within, and it's exerted amongst others, and exercised and practiced amongst others. Leadership is a word that we use to embody a series of traits, qualities, wants, wills, passions, talents. They're just like a series of traits and qualities and emotions. but they originate within the self and they're exercised amongst other people on their behalf. Um, and as well, it's a reciprocation, a matter of reciprocation. And when I help you, I benefit from it. When I help myself, then others around me will also benefit from my own level of happiness and consideration for them. So, and I think that this lens particularly keeps you grounded in the ability to give from within yourself. Unfortunately, the nature of power and status and fame and money and followers is as we gain more of them, we tend to forget that our leadership comes from within us. And I've seen that a lot with politicians. If you turn on the news, you see many powerful leaders who fall from grace, and they tend to disappear because they forgot that their leadership was actually a matter of will to help and to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point it became cloudy when they really enjoyed the niceties of shaking hands and wearing the suit and tie and being validated all the time and applauded all the time. And suddenly they think that their leadership is because they're worthy. Yeah, they're worthy of these things because they're better than other people, or they're smarter, or they've just been luckier. And we forget that leadership is just a matter of what comes from within us. So when you call yourself an unleader, it's kind of like a little bit of edge and defiance to keep you kind of, sticking it to the man, but also reminding yourself that leadership is within you always. It's a matter of choice and will and responsibility. And when you practice that, you really do, I think, get a reflective sense of who you are and, the things that you can really do for other people. And it contributes a lot to a sense of purpose within you.
Which helps the whole world without.
Absolutely. It's, I think that the more that I go on and try to encourage and invite people to think about themselves as leaders in their own lives, it's so simple that we want to dismiss it because it seems too good to be true. But it's also really reflective of the fact that our worlds, our lives are very reflective of our mindsets. They're very reflective of what we see. We can look at a pile of garbage in the street, and you can look at that in one of several ways. Someone might see that and say, look at that environmental waste. We should be doing more to encourage recycling in the city. Someone else might say, I hate my life. This is shit. Like my life is like this pile of shit on the sidewalk. Someone else might say, damn, that's the most beautiful garbage I've seen. It's all a matter of what you see and how you see it.
Absolutely.
I've never looked at a pile of garbage and thought that it was beautiful.
I'll bet some people have. They actually think it's so good they'll go dig through it.
I see plenty of that in New York, trust me. But yeah, it's I think, like I said, it's a matter of what you see and how you see it. It's not like tricking yourself or things being too good to be true. It's you need to compliment how you see the world.
Right. If it's ugly on the outside, it's ugly on the inside.
It's a mirror of how we see ourselves. It's a mirror of how we see the world in general.
Right. How about 3 actionable steps for the listeners that they can take when they're in that terror or fear or whatever?
I think that step 1 would be to articulate your values on paper. I think it's, you don't have to be a writer to write them out on paper. What are your values? And when I say values, it's a very, eyes glossed over term because it's overused and it means different things to different people. For me, I define values as being the ways that you really want, it's like the things you really want to embody every day of your life, whether or not you're very conscious of it, and by the same measure, the things that you really want other people to experience and to embody themselves. For me, that's matters of giving, selflessness, compassion, empowerment, freedom. There's a lot of values that I really personally cherish, things that I really love and I'm grateful for, and that I want other people to live and experience themselves, just on the basis of their being human. And that's a really important step because when you articulate those values, they can be as many as you kind of can fathom. From there, you can really kind of see that there's a common thread between them, and you'll see, for me, all these different values that I appreciate are reflective of personal traits and qualities and strengths of my own. I call, I'm a connector personality. I'm always trying to put people in touch with one another, and I can connect really well with people on a personal level because of my capacity for like empathizing and compassion. So I think when you articulate your values in such a way, you begin to see not only what you're really grounded in, but you begin to see more of like what your strengths are. That's a really important actionable step because, as I mentioned earlier, when you're facing fears and uncertainties and unknowns, that's the kind of like your personal manifesto. This is like Dave 101. This is like me grounded. This is me, and nothing's really going to shake this. Nothing's really going to change
That's a
this.
good way to put it right there. Nothing's going to shake this.
Nothing's going to change
Oh,
that.
that's powerful.
Yeah, and I think that you can use that, and you can put it on your wall. You can put it on the bathroom mirror. That's who you are. They're not just like fleeting niceties. They're not just emotional moments of happiness
What
or
you
fear.
live by.
That's what you live by. That's what you really. That's actually like it's like your spiritual DNA. It's like up on the wall. That's really who you are. For step 2, again, I'm going to keep going back to writing because that's just my home base. If you write out those fears, you can actually probably put them side by side and list out your fears and then list out your values. And I bet you'll be able to see the gap that exists between the fears and the values.
So if you have really good.
If you have your strengths and you have your values, you see what you cherish most and who you are most. You have your fears. They're going to be reflective of either what you're really uncomfortable with, or because they're so opposing to what your ideals are. And when you begin to identify fears in that kind of regard, it's all about really boiling down a lot of complexities and confusions that we kind of torture ourselves with, when we're trying to diagnose.
I sure do know.
Trying to diagnose ourselves, and we're being tough on ourselves for, why can't I be more like this? Why can't I be more like Y? Well, if you're able to see who you are and contrast those with, your fears, your dislikes, and things that aren't really jiving with you, you gain a real sense of clarity. And for the third actionable step, we have values and strengths. You have your fears. I come up with my own list of to-dos, which would be facing those fears. So write a list out. How would you face those fears individually in a way that complements your values and your strengths? If I was really worried going into that moment where I was quitting my job and articulating that I am not meant for this job because I really feel like I can do more for people right now at the age of 23 than waiting 10, 20, 30 years in politics to be qualified enough to help people. That's reflective of my value of communication, of articulating things like I'm articulating to you right now. And so facing that fear of talking to my bosses would be overcome by my ability to communicate, which is another one of my values. So I think you can really kind of connect the threads and say, whatever your fears are, they can be overcome by your values. Those fears are reflective of something that matters, and so your passions, your strengths, your talents can be they're like the vehicle. Passion, as I say, passion is a vehicle through which we kind of it's like a shooting star. We grab onto it and we overcome that unknown, that gap, that fogginess, that haziness, to get you on the other side. And if you harness those passions in that way, in that vehicular way, then you'll be able to not only face the fear, but move through it and move on to the next one.
Wow, this is just great, and I just have to compliment you. You have to keep on with the speaking. Your presence is strong, and you have a real clarity and authenticity. So you need to keep pursuing that speaking.
I know. Well, hey, anybody out there, you need a speaker. You know who to turn to.
There you have it.
Know who to turn to. Yeah, I've been. I think I'm sensing some more speaking opportunities be coming up in the next years.
Yeah, well, I can see that you would be. My goal was always to be hired. I would have a goal of at least getting 1 to 3 jobs out every time I did a speaking engagement. And oftentimes I would think, oh, I'm not going to get them. And then I would get a call up to a year later and they would refer back to one specific talk. So
Yeah.
that's just a little friendly advice to set a goal on what you want from that audience.
Mm,
But
I
I'm
like
sure you'll get it real easy.
I like it. Well, here, hey, fingers crossed. This is what it's all about. It's, like I said, my values, writing, communicating, connecting, and connecting ideas.
Right.
There's
Right. And
all,
who doesn't need that kind of thing for their organization, for whatever they're into? I mean, the world is crying for what you have.
oh, well, thank you, Tess. I appreciate that, and I hope that these tips, this advice, if anybody needs clarity or they want to ask me any questions about it, I'm very accessible online. You can find me on every social network that exists, or you just email me david@daversolo.com, and I'd be
Okay.
happy to speak with you more about it.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's been fun getting to know you.
It's been great to speak with you finally in a more personal way.
I'll think of you every time I look at that garbage outside.
Thank you. That's high praise right there.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Tess.